Hello, everyone out there. It is me, Liam Carnahan, your host. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation about self-publishing. I'm just going to take a quick moment to introduce myself in case there's folks on here who don't know who I am. Oops, skipping ahead there. So my name is Liam Carnahan. As I said, I am the co-host of the Freelance Success Community. So for those of you who are freelancers out there joining us today, that's a community where you can come and enjoy private conversation. It's like a private social network only for freelancers. We have speakers coming in. We have lots and lots of resources and conversations happening every day. So you can find out more about freelance success over at joinfreelancesuccess.com. And when I'm not doing that, I am a book editor and coach over at Invisible Ink Editing, which is also a company I founded in 2012. And you can use our services for book coaching, manuscript development, anything that helps you get your manuscript all the way up to publication. These two screenshots you see here, actually, let me just make these a little bit bigger. Can I? Maybe I can't. Oh, here we go. These two screenshots here, if you want to use these, will get you the one on the right. This one over here will get you onto the joinfreelancesuccess.com website. And this one over here will bring you to the newsletter for Invisible Ink Editing, where every week we send out advice and tips and insights about writing, publishing, and everything like that. These will come back up on the screen, but I'll give you a second now to come and follow us or join us. We'd love to have you there. During today's conversation, please do feel free to ask questions as we are talking. I can see everything that you write over on LinkedIn, so I will be sure to ask them. Speaking of good advice about writing and publishing and editing, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guests here. There she is. Hi, Satta. Hello. Hi.
Hi, Liam. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to just quickly mention that you're here today to talk about how you went through the process of publishing your book. It's called The Forever Freelancer: How to Build a Thriving Solo Creative Business and Unlock Family and Financial Freedom. And you wrote and published this thing yourself. So,
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful. Welcome and thank you. This QR code leads to a opportunity to pre-order. Is that right?
Yeah, to pre-order the Kindle edition of the book. The paperback edition will be out on June 17th, and audiobook pre-orders are coming soon.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, take a chance to grab that screenshot right now. Again, I'm going to put these slides back up later on in the presentation, but just so that we can actually see each other while we're talking, I'm going to go ahead and switch here. Okay, Satta, so why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about the book? Specifically curious to know what made you want to write this book now.
So I've been a full-time freelancer for 12 years. I'm a former journalist, and after back-to-back layoffs, I found myself freelancing. I always like to say I became a freelancer by accident, but now I'm a freelancer by choice. So I felt like after more than a decade in, I had some lessons to share, my mistakes, things I've learned along the way, successes I've had, because people often ask me, friends, former colleagues, people who are traditionally employed, like, what is it like to be a freelancer? Because I think a lot of people are curious about self-employment, but they're understandably afraid to explore it. So I thought rather than distilling advice one-to-one or even in like webinars or different sessions, that I write a book. And I've always dreamed of writing a book. I just never thought it would be this book. I thought maybe I'd be a fiction author. I think if you're a writer, most people dream of writing like the next great American novel. I ended up writing a nonfiction business book. So the book is not only about how to freelance, it's why to freelance. And it's really geared toward parents, caregivers, millennial women, Gen X women, giving them sort of license to design a career on their own terms. And I think by doing that, they can also achieve greater financial resilience in addition to flexibility.
Yeah, and let me just say, I know you probably don't want to boast, so I'll boast for you that you're not just a freelancer, but quite a successful one. I've known you for probably 2 years now, and just am constantly impressed with both the business you run, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this book. I know we have a lot of people today who are thinking about self-publishing as well.
Mhm.
But first of all, the freelancers on the call, I hope you guys get a copy of this book go pre-order it, because if you want to learn from somebody who's a pro, Satta is the person. But
Thanks,
let's,
Liam.
of course, but let's talk about the publishing process, because I think there's also a lot of people here today who are
Mhm.
like, how do I get published? And that's such a big question. My first question for you is, did you consider traditional publishing as well? Or did you think from the start, I'm going to self-publish this book?
I never considered traditional publishing. Like I knew what it entailed. I have family members who are published authors, and they are traditionally published. So I knew what that process entailed. You have to query agents to get your book accepted and hope someone takes you on. You write a book proposal, or you send them the actual manuscript, and you hope they take you on. And there's a lot of rejection involved in that process. And then if you're lucky enough to get an agent, then they send the book out to publishers. Again, a lot of rejection involved in that process. And then once you get a publisher, you sign your rights. They own the rights to your book, and you do that in exchange for an advance and then maybe the potential to earn royalties. And I just thought about all that and the length of time it would take. And I thought, why not just try my hand at self-publishing? Because I was fortunate enough to have the resources to do this. I didn't necessarily have the time, but I made the time. And there's always hybrid publishing. That's another model where you work with a publisher, but there's more of a profit sharing agreement, and maybe like 70-30, 60-40, but they handle all like the project management aspect of coordinating between editors, designers, and all these other folks, which is when you self-publish, you have to do this all yourself. You are the author and the publisher. You are the creative and the business person and the marketer. So it's challenging, but it's also rewarding.
I think this is something I say to people a lot when they're asking me, should I self-publish or should I try to go traditional? It's like, you really hit the nail on the head. It's, first of all, how much rejection can you handle? Because you're going to get a lot if you go the
Yeah.
traditional publishing. Even famous authors get rejected a lot. And it's, how much control do you want to have? Are you willing to roll the dice and let fate guide you in order to get maybe a more, I don't want to use the word prestigious, but I think a lot of people
Yeah,
think of
it is. No, that's fair.
or do you want to take on a lot of work, but have total control over the process? Not total control, but a lot of control over the process. My question for you is, do you think part of the calculation, or I guess it wasn't a calculation, you said you always wanted to go self-publish, but do you feel like your life as a freelancer made it easier for you to approach self-publishing?
Yes, exactly that. Because I'm already used to doing things solo as a solopreneur and being very hands-on in my business and doing things for myself, even though I do outsource certain things. So I felt comfortable doing that as part of the book publishing process. And I used to be, before I became a freelancer, I was an editorial operations manager for a news organization. So that involved a lot of project management, cross-functional collaboration with different departments. So it's like I just transferred what I used to do in my old job to my business and now to publishing a book.
That is one thing you can say about freelancing, is it builds up that resilience and independence to give you the drive to do something like this. Let's talk about the timeline. So when did you decide you wanted to write it? And I kind of picture publishing and writing a book, they're two parallel streets running alongside each other, but they don't necessarily start at the same time. So did you like write a draft and then start on the marketing and publishing? Did you do them side by side? When did you begin? How long did it take?
So I came up with the idea to write the book in like summer 2024. I was just like looking out my kitchen window, washing dishes, and I was like, I should write a book. And it started to come to me. And then I immediately afterwards started outlining. That was the first process. And then I decided to actually hire a book coach before I even started drafting the book, because I wanted someone to hold me accountable. And I knew if I had that external accountability and something I was paying a significant amount of money for every month, that it would push me to finish the book. And it did. So I started writing the book in February 2025. I had my crappy first draft by summer 2025, and then a really workable first draft, I would say, by the end of the year. I started developmental edits in October, and that completely transformed the book. But I would say end to end, from when I initially put pen to paper or finger to keyboard to the draft that eventually turned into the book was a year.
Wow. That's incredibly fast. I have
It
to
is,
say,
yeah.
working with authors and writing my own book now for 3 years, that's
Mhm.
very quick, but it doesn't surprise me because you've given me a peek behind your process and it's so organized. It's a well-oiled machine, I'll say that much. Okay, so I want to ask because you mentioned outsourcing things. The writing, obviously, that was you, but you had this book coach as a member of your team, and you assembled a larger team to support you. Is that right?
Yeah, so I had my book coach. She was the first person I hired. And then I hired a developmental editor who actually my book coach referred. Because that can be the tricky thing about self-publishing is finding really qualified professionals to work with. There's no go-to platform that, oh, you want to self-publish a book? Here's some people you can consider using. I think Ingram Spark and Reedsy have some sort of directory or database, but there's a lot of curating and culling you have to do. I use LinkedIn to find folks too. So my book coach referred my developmental editor, and then I went on LinkedIn and I found a copy editor, did some searching, took maybe like 30 minutes or so, and I found a few people that I liked. And then I found a proofreader the same way, book cover designer. Here's a tip if you want to self-publish a book, look at other books you like that are in your genre and either read the acknowledgments or listen to the acknowledgments if it's an audiobook, or look on the back cover to see who those people worked with, to see who that author worked with. And that's how I found my cover designer, because there was a book I was reading about B2B like storytelling, and she designed the cover of the book. She actually works full time for a hybrid publisher, but has her own business on the side. So that's how I found her. Yeah, it's just assembling a team, and the difficult part is finding people and then talking to them, interviewing them, and then assembling everyone and then going from there, and then coordinating between all these different stakeholders because there are all these interdependencies. One thing is related to the other. You can't do one step before you finish this step. So coordinating all of that is the challenging part, I think, when you self-publish.
Yeah. So I think just from my experience, so I've been an editor and a book coach since 2012. And so much of the work is still referral based. I have certain book marketers and book cover designers that I'm friendly with that I recommend. And I think there's a lot of that. But it sounds like you did a lot of work to find the right people. How did you know that you had landed on the right, for example, your developmental editor? You mentioned that they transformed the book. How did you manage to, what kind of questions did you ask? What did you learn from that person to choose them as your developmental editor?
So I had some, again, I leaned on my book coach. I'm like, oh, I'm talking to this person for developmental editing today or next week. What kind of questions should I ask? I also, believe it or not, use ChatGPT to say, hey, I'm having a meeting with this kind of creative or trade person. What would you ask them? Here are some questions I plan to ask. What would you add to this list? And obviously you QA it. You think, okay, this makes sense or this won't work. And then I use that. But it's also like you go on vibes. Like, could I work with this person? Because it is, at the end of the day, a working relationship and a collaborative one. You want to make sure that this person that you're entrusting with is something you've always dreamed of doing, will take the care and attention or give the care and attention to it that you would. So it's just when you talk to people if you can work with them or not. And I just went with my gut.
Yeah, and from the editor perspective, it should be the same way. We don't really want to work with people who we don't have that vibe match with. If the book is something that is totally out of my realm of interest and experience, I'll turn it down. So be wary of editors out there that won't meet you face to face before you edit, either on Zoom or won't give you a sample edit or something like that, because so much of it, I say that the relationship between writer and editor is sacred and really special. It's unlike anything else.
Yeah.
How did they train? So, what was the developmental editing process like for you?
It was daunting and great at the same time because
Mm.
she really, her edits transformed the book. She basically told me what I needed to change. She didn't like do hands-on editing. So a developmental editor really looks, and you can describe the work you do too, Liam, really looks at the big picture of the book and vision of the book. And whatever draft you turn in, they say, is this draft meeting that vision? Or how do we get this the copy, this manuscript closer to your vision of the book. And they'll look at things like, are the chapters in the right order? Are you missing chapters? Are you saying everything you want to say in the right way to say it? Are you giving people the information they need? So they really focus on the reader experience. And that's something she stressed to me. I'm not focused on the author experience or making you feel good. I'm like, focused on the reader experience. So she just, I don't want to say she tore the book apart. It wasn't necessarily that. Her big takeaway was, we need to map quest this book. If this is supposed to be a roadmap for freelancing, like someone picking this up, how do I start a business? It needs to read that way. And it didn't. She also said there was too much, because I wanted the book to be part like business memoir, part how-to guide, but more like 65% how-to guide and 35% memoir-ish, personal business narrative. And she said it was leaning too much toward the personal story. Like the first draft that I turned into her, she was like, it's about like 80% personal story and 20% how to, and we need to flip that. Like it's off balance. So that's what I worked on doing over she gave me 2.5 months from her round 1 edits to round 2 edits. So I had 2.5 months to implement all her changes, and I did it right down to the wire. I think it took me about 2 months. And then she did round 2 edits, and then she gave additional feedback, but she was like, thank you for actually listening. Because apparently, you know this as a developmental editor, people don't listen. They are so precious about their book that they're like, this is my vision for my book. This is what I want it to be. This is my book. And at the end of the day, it's not really your book. It's the reader's book. You've created this so that someone will learn from it, be engaged by it, entertained by it. So you need to deliver on that promise. When someone is shelling out their hard-earned money that they could spend on a million other things to buy your book, you need to deliver. And she made sure that I delivered on the promise and intention of the book. I feel. We'll see how people feel when they read it. But yeah, it was definitely transformed. And it almost doubled in word count as a result too.
Wow. That is often the way with developmental editing. And that's why they call it that, because you're developing the book. With developmental, an editor's job, it's definitely not to praise you. We give praise, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's to help you make the book that your readers are supposed to read.
Yeah.
And I want to get into a little bit about how you used AI in this process. But I think it's important to note that with the editing process, AI tools will tell you that your book is great and that everything is working well. And I just don't think you can get the same kind of experience like what you're talking about if you try to use AI to edit your book.
Are people using AI to edit their books?
We are hearing people talk about that, about just putting the whole book into Claude or ChatGPT and saying, what do you think? And you didn't do that. And I assume you wouldn't do that. What do you think of your idea? What do you think of that concept?
But putting my book into
I guess, what do you think would be lost? You use a human editor. What do you lost if people are using AI to edit?
There's just a lot of nuance that an AI tool isn't going to get. They don't have the years and years of experience of editing 100 books or so to say, this is what's wrong with it. It's just scraping the internet and making a guess about, hey, this is how your book should improve. I understand maybe from a cost perspective, or someone who's never been through the book publishing process and maybe they just want to get their work out there. Maybe that's why they would use AI. But if you want to professionally self-publish, you have to use humans.
Agreed, obviously. So you said one of the hard parts of working with you assembled your like Avengers team to support you. But the hard part was coordinating those. So how did you overcome that challenge?
I use tools like Asana and Notion. I have my Google Sheets, my spreadsheets. Again, leaning on my book coach. I would highly advise, if you can afford it and you're a first-time author, even if you published a book before, 1 or 2 books before, to really lean on a book coach. And I've worked with her. I'm still working with her to this day. She's turned into a book marketing strategist. But you can work with someone for 3 months just to get your initial chapters done. But I would just lean on her and ask her a lot of questions. I forgot to mention that she's published 3 or 4 books herself. And she's been traditionally published. She hasn't self-published. But there are book coaches that work with both traditionally published and self-published authors. So I would just lean on her if I had questions to help me in terms of timeline, like when should I make sure to have this done? And she would hold me accountable. She was like, okay, so you say you need to do this next. Let's talk about what date you need to do it by. And then I will check in with you right before then and on that date to make sure you've done it. And we
Yes.
would use Voxer, and we would use Voxer to communicate back and forth. And we would have meetings like every 2 weeks. So we'd meet twice a month. And in the beginning, what those meetings entailed were I would give her a draft of like my chapters for her to read, like several pages of each chapter or chapter itself. And I would do that like a couple days before our meeting. And then we would get on and she would give me her feedback and we'd go through it and I'd ask questions. So she served as an alpha reader along with, I call her my book therapist and book fairy godmother. And her name is Tin Kim Lamb. If anyone is interested, she has a website. And if anyone wants to know the other creatives that I worked with, I would highly recommend all of them. And I can share their information as well.
Yep. So we'll be sharing this conversation again on social media. So if you follow Invisible Ink Editing on Instagram or me on LinkedIn or Satta on LinkedIn, you'll be able to, and we'll post the names of those folks as well. And of course, I'm obliged to say, I did not work with Satta. First of all, this book is probably, I'm not the target audience. I probably wouldn't have taken it on. And we just didn't work together. That's all it is. And I typically don't work with friends either because it can.
Yeah, that would have been tricky. That's what I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always supportive of people working with book coaches. Like you said, find the right person. If you do want to work with a book coach and you like my vibe from this call, please do reach out. I was meeting with a client yesterday. I have to say, from my perspective, it's the best thing when we have a client like you. A client over yesterday, we sat down, we had a really nerdy and fun conversation for 2 hours about the nuances of what he was working on and where it could improve. And he was really receptive to the feedback, which is going to make his content way better because he's listening to an outside voice.
Yeah. And I don't understand that you hire someone to help you, but then you don't take their advice.
Yeah. I think they're hoping to hire an editor it's perfect. But that we didn't get into editing to say that.
Exactly.
Okay. So you are now in the marketing phase, I would say. Launch is coming up / is happening now. So how did you approach that? When did you start thinking about marketing this book? Was that something you and the book coach were working on from day one or closer to the published date?
We talked about it. Half of me feels like I should have started earlier, but then the other half of me feels like I started at the right time because I think I was able to nail down my messaging and positioning for the book. Like I knew what I wanted to say. You can't start marketing and not really be sure of what your message is. So I think going through the book and the draft and the developmental edits helped me clarify my message. So I started marketing in January-ish, I would say. But this is the thing when you try to get traditionally published, they want to see that you have a platform. So they're looking at your social media follower count and all of this other stuff. Or if you have a newsletter, how many subscribers do you have? If you have a Substack, how many subscribers and followers do you have? And I didn't really do any of that intentionally before to build my audience. We'll see how that works out. Although my book coach did say to me, she was like, social media doesn't really sell books. She's like, it's really word of mouth. So I started in January, but there are some authors who will start a year in advance. They'll do, what do they call it? Like a beta book launch where like similar to a startup company launch, when you're launching a product, they'll have a community give them feedback and write a draft and send it to their followers and be like, what do you think of this? And it's a real collaborative, real-time process. So that's one way people can do it. I didn't do that way. I wrote my manuscript first and then I started marketing it. And like I said, I think that was the best way to do it because I knew what my intention was with the book. And so I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Substack. I have a newsletter list and all those things I'm in the process of growing as I'm marketing my book. And that's the leeway you have when you're self-publishing. If you were traditionally published, they would want to see all those things beforehand, that you had those things ready to go and you have that foundation. Because At the end of the day, like we try to treat book publishing like high art, but it's a business and they want to
Mhm.
make sure they can get a return on their investment. So if you have $100,000, 100,000 followers, to them, that de-risks the investment a little bit. They're like, okay, this person can sell books. So I'm doing it a different way and we'll see how it works out.
I want to ask more about that, but I also want to clarify something for people who are listening to this conversation and thinking about going traditional publishing. Nothing wrong with that path, but one thing you should definitely be aware of is that the marketing is still a lot of it is still on you when
Yeah.
you go the traditional path, because your publisher that you eventually land probably has 10 or 15 other books that they're releasing that quarter or that month even. And they'll do some marketing for you, but they expect you to have a following, to have a website, to have social media, to be out there hustling for your own book as well. Especially if you want them to keep you on for your second book or third book, you're going to have to put the work into marketing. So the sad news for writers out there, I don't know many writers who are like really excited to do marketing. You're going to have to find a way to do it, because no matter which path you take, if you want to sell, the marketing is on you. So you've got Substack, Instagram, TikTok, you said. What is your strategy there? Do you have a content calendar? Do you have a plan for all those platforms?
Yeah, and that's where I used AI. That's where my Forever Freelancer AI twin comes in. So
Yes, let's talk about AI twin. I want to hear about this concept.
the AI twin is just a fancy way to say it. I used a custom GPT, which is like my own model, so to speak. And what I did was I put in my book landing page. I turned it into a PDF. I had my book description that I had written up in a couple other like internal docs. I had this doc that was called chapter leftovers, like things that didn't make it into the book. So think like scraps like that. And I think honestly, I put in a draft of the introduction, even though it's changed several times, because I think that helped get a feel and flavor for the book. And then I created this custom GPT that I call my Forever Freelancer AI twin. And it thinks, acts, reasons, and speaks and talks like the book. So, for example, if I want to create a social media calendar for Instagram, it'll help me come up with ideas that align with the core themes of the book. If I want to refine an Instagram or TikTok caption, it will make sure that it's in the voice of the book, i.e., my voice, and I'll go in and edit it and things like that. So that has helped with marketing, especially since I have a book marketing coordinator that I've worked with, a human person. So I will often tell her, okay, you can use the AI twin for this, or use the AI twin she'll help me with podcast pitches. I also created a ChatGPT skill for podcast pitching. It's called my podcast pitch customizer. And there's a lot of upfront work you need to do for AI to be effective. So what I did was create like a Google Doc with 7 different pitch angles, depending on the podcast. I also had a spreadsheet of target podcasts. There are about 50 or so on the list. And I used AI to help me create that. I used Perplexity because I find it to be more accurate, in addition to my AI twin. So I have this really targeted list of podcast targets, and then this list of angles. And then I created this ChatGPT skill to automate it. And what it does, it creates an email version of the pitch and a shorter Instagram DM version of the pitch. I've had her use that to create like the first 20 on the list. I'll say, hey, Victoria, can you do the pitches for these 20? And she'll use the AI twin, but mostly the podcast pitch customizer, the AI skill to create it.
And has that resulted in are you going on a little book tour over the next few weeks? Is that the plan?
I'm doing a podcast tour. You are my second podcast. I have another podcast tomorrow, doing another interview on Monday. So that's the seed of my podcast tour, the beginnings of it. So if anyone has a podcast and they'd love to have me on, I'd be honored to be a guest.
Okay. And are you planning on doing anything else? Are you going to do any in-person events or anything like that?
I haven't thought about doing that yet, just because I'm trying to, especially as a self-publisher or author publisher, I'm trying to look at things at scale. So virtual is a little bit easier to do than having in-person events. I'm also going to I've already started sending ARCs or advanced reader copies to people, other solo creatives, people who I think would be the target audience for the book. And also I'm going to send them to influencers and thought leaders and other more like prominent folks who have big audiences, which is something you would do with traditional publishing anyway. You send them an early copy of the book. And if they like it, you can ask them for a blurb or endorsement or to share it with their community. So that's also a part of my marketing strategy.
And it sounds like that's also a gateway to book reviews when it's out,
Yeah,
which I
definitely.
know is another important part of the marketing strategy. You want honest and hopefully really good book reviews, which I'm sure you will get probably from me once I have a chance to read.
I didn't
Okay.
think you were going to say that, by the way.
I just want to read a couple comments from Michael, who's watching. He did, when we were talking about sample editings, he said for best results, be sure to pay for the sample edit. That's great advice. I will say at Invisible Ink Editing, we do a 750 word sample edit for free. That's because it does help us too. Like I was saying, we don't work with everybody who sends us their manuscript. We choose people who we're going to be the best editor for. So I like to see your work before I ever make a pitch to you at all. And I think that's what a good editor does. Michael also says, as an independent publisher, you have to sell a lot fewer books than a trad publisher.
editor, the copy editor, um, the copy editor, the proofreader, the book cover designer. And there are services that you can use that will do this for you in terms of you can use like technology to design your own book cover yourself. That may not be the best way to go, even though it's more cost efficient because you're not a designer. Like the design, graphic design, book cover design is a skill. So it helps to have skilled professionals working on your cover. So I would also be kind to yourself throughout the process. There may be some days you won't be able to write or you won't get as much writing done as you think, or you just don't, your head isn't in the game. And my book coach would tell me that all the time. Be kind to yourself. It's okay. Sometimes you can take a break and maybe you're not working on the actual manuscript, but you're working on something else related to the book. So maybe during those times, that's when you look for those other independent creatives that you could potentially work with or look at other book authors, their Instagram or their Substacks and see how they're talking about their book and marketing their book, or learn more about Amazon KDP or Kindle publishing. Like you use those other moments to educate yourself about the book publishing process.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. I think writers tend to be hard on themselves, and I think freelancers tend to be hard on themselves as well. And so it's the perfect storm for that. And I don't know, are you familiar with The Writer's Way, or have you ever read that?
The book, I
Yeah,
haven't read it, but yeah, I'm familiar. Or is it The Artist's Way or is that
The
different?
Artist's Way. What did I say? The Writer's Way? The Artist.
Yeah.
It is for all artists. But she talks in that book about going on artist dates, which is like once a week you go and you do something that's fun and creative. You do it alone. And she says that's like an essential part of the creative process, is giving your mind a break.
Yeah.
You can't just chain yourself to your desk and write.
Yeah.
Or your brain will protest at some.
Yeah. And I will say that's something that did not serve me well being a freelancer and having my own freelance business that I unfortunately brought to the book writing process. Because when you own your own business, you're focused on being hyper productive and getting things done. Because when you get things done, that means money. But when you put that same lens on the creative process, it is not good because then your output isn't as good as it would have been otherwise. You're just forcing it. And creativity, it can't be forced. You need time to breathe. You need time to think. And one thing that I did that I think was good, similar to artist dates, I did a solo writing retreat, like 3 or 4 days. I went to Newport, Rhode Island. I'm originally from Rhode Island, from Providence, but I specifically picked Newport because that's where we got married. It's some place I had visited before and I really love. And I thought it would be great to be in a space that I love to finish my crappy first draft of this book and really focus on it. So that was really helpful. And my husband, we have 2 kids. We have 2 sons, 7 and 2. So he gave me time and space to write, which I was really appreciative for, because it's hard when you're juggling all these different life responsibilities and you dream of writing a book, as many of us have, to make time and space for it. But when you have people supporting you and that system of support, whether it's spouse, partner, friend, whoever it is, book coach, that really helps you along the process and makes you motivated to keep going.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many ways you can get that. I think I'm in a couple writing groups as well. I don't know if you were in any, but there's an organization here, you probably know them, Grub Street in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Great writing center. I took a memoir course there and ended up meeting 2 writing groups out of it. Exist in most major cities, New York, LA, DC, Seattle. They all have writing organizations where you can meet people like that. On our website, on the invisibleinkedititing.com website, the most recent blog is an entire blog about how to find beta readers, often for free. So there are subreddits, there are communities on Goodreads where you can find people who, believe it or not, will read your book, often for free if it's of a genre or a topic that they're interested in, and give you feedback. So often writing is an isolating experience.
Yeah.
It's interesting how much of this conversation applies to both writing and freelancing and be extremely isolating.
Yeah.
But the community support is actually such an essential ingredient.
It is.
So, yeah. Now, you mentioned your next books Are you going to be writing fiction? Are you going to go into fiction?
No, it's funny. At Grub Street, I did take some fiction writing courses and they were great. But I realize I read nonfiction a lot. That's when I go to read or grab an audiobook, it's usually nonfiction, like business or self-help or personal development. So I'm like, if these are the books that I gravitate towards, why would I not write about them? Like write in that genre. It never occurred to me until recently. I would love to write fiction someday, but that's a whole different beast, an entirely different animal. But my next two books will also be of the same ilk, so nonfiction business books.
Okay. Is one of them going to be about how to become your own solo self-publishing house?
No, no,
Seems like you could maybe write a book about that at some
no.
point.
We'll see how this goes, and then maybe I'll be authoritative enough to write about it.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the formats of the books that are going to be available, because you were telling me a little bit about this before we hopped on the call. So you have an audiobook, an ebook, and a paperback coming out.
Yes.
What was the impetus, why did you decide to do all three? And is that process really hard to manage?
Yeah. I just decided to do all three because I'm like, if I'm going to write a book, let me do everything. Who knows when I'll get the opportunity to do this again or have the resources to do it again in this way. So I knew typically you do the paperback and the ebook. Most of the time, that's what publishers do or authors do if they're self-published, hybrid published, traditionally published. And the audiobook, I just thought, I was like, this would be a cool experience. And my book coach and I were talking about this yesterday, and she was like, for accessibility, it's also important because
Mhm.
people consume information in different ways and engage with it in different ways. There are people with disabilities who may not be able to grab the paperback book or the ebook, and the audiobook is a better way for them to digest that information and engage with the book. So you want to have different options for different types of readers. So that's what I thought about too. And for the audiobook, I actually recorded it a couple of weeks ago. I went up to Vermont, drove 4 hours away because I live outside of Boston, and it was a great experience. So the audiobook producer I use is actually called the Audiobook Experience. It's run by Mary Catherine Jones, and she has been a book narrator herself, voice narrator for different types of businesses and different books. And she really guided me through the process. And she actually just sent me the final files earlier this week. So the audiobook itself is going to be about 6.5 hours long because the book itself is 20 chapters.
Yeah, it's funny. I also gravitate to nonfiction for audiobooks. Like because I find it's just easier for me it's almost like a long podcast, right? I don't know why, but my brain is, whereas when I'm reading fiction, I want to be physical with it. But that's a great point about accessibility too. I also want to just go back to two things you mentioned that I'm just thinking about. So first of all, the solo writing retreat, what a brilliant idea. I think what I just want to reiterate is that, so I've gone on several writing retreats. Some of them have been alone, but the best thing I do is actually I have 4 friends who are also all writers. Once a year, we rent a house in somebody's state. We all live on 4 corners of the country now, and we just spend 4 or 5 nights together. It's not cheap. It's not crazy expensive either. It's nearly as expensive as going to one of those really expensive retreats. You can make a writing retreat yourself with friends, by yourself. You have 2 kids in a full-time business, and you did it. So if other people can do it, I think it's such a good way to really get to dig your heels in and get some work done.
That's an awesome idea. My next retreat, maybe I'll do that. Maybe you can invite me along.
Yes. The next one is we're doing the New England version this year. And then the other thing is you mentioned having a document where you keep all of your cut items and everything that you're rewriting. So there's the phrase "kill your darlings." I'm sure you've heard that phrase, which if people don't know, editors often say you have to kill your darlings, take your favorite parts of your book, and they often get cut. But I prefer to use the phrase "rehome your darlings" because I think it's so important to keep that content. For the fiction writers and the creative nonfiction writers listening, one of the ways you're going to want to market yourself is by getting essays and short stories published before and while the book is coming out, especially essays and short stories that are related to the book you're publishing, but not an excerpt from the book you're publishing. That is a huge part of creative nonfiction and fiction marketing. So having that document of everything you cut from the book is going to make it a lot easier to find those little gems that can become essays, can become blurbs or snippets or things that you could share, things that turn into a Substack post. I cannot recommend enough. Save the things you're cutting. Do not just delete and move on.
And that's exactly what I did this morning. I actually used my it's called Chapter Leftovers, the document that I have. I use that for part of it for my Substack essay I wrote this morning about the tax mistake that almost tanked my business. So, and I've done that before since I launched my Substack in February, just like taking these leftover bits here and there and use them for my Substack posts and essays.
Yes, brilliant idea. Save yourself the time. And
Yeah.
that might be another thing for ChatGPT too, or put that into ChatGPT and say, can you pull out some Instagram captions or ideas for content out of this
Yeah.
cuts?
Yeah. Definitely.
So we have about 10 more minutes left. I again want to encourage folks to ask questions if anybody has any thoughts or questions there. I have another one for you. I want to talk a little bit more about the content in the book because we've been talking a lot about self. What's your favorite part of the book?
Gosh. I love the introduction. And as I'm sure as a writer yourself, introductions are hard.
Mm.
Probably rewrote it at least 15 different times or tweaked it at least 15 different times. And I also love the latter chapters of the book where I interview other freelancers about caring for ourselves as self-employed solo business owners and about what true work-life integration looks like when you have your own business and you've made this choice to design a career on your own terms. And I talk about work-life integration in the introduction of the book because we all know work-life balance is a myth. I think when you are self-employed, you have the ability to blend work and personal throughout the day in ways that you can't with a traditional job. For instance, I might be at my son's school one day for a couple hours volunteering for something, or at their field day, which they have every year. And then I'll be back at my desk later in the afternoon and work a couple hours and be like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I'm done for the day. When you have a traditional job, you can't do that. If you're supposed to be there from 9 to 5, you better be at your desk from 9 to 5, even if you may not be working the entire time. So those parts of the book where other people share their experience, I really love. Oh yeah, I mean, there are several chapters. There's 20 of them, but yeah, I'm really proud of the book that I put out. I think it's the best book I could have written at this point in time in my life. And I really hope it is helpful to people and give people the courage, whether you are currently traditionally employed and have always wanted to be a freelancer or launch your own business, whether you only want to freelance part-time or whether you are a new freelancer, you're 2 to 3 years in and you're trying to grow and scale your business, but you don't know how and you feel stuck. I hope this book becomes like a go-to resource for those folks. And even advanced freelancers, there are chapters in the book that will be valuable to them that they can learn something from.
I think for people like us who've been freelancing for so long, you know that it plateaus, right? You go through these, or at least I have, and a lot of the freelancers I mentored have, where you go and you reach a certain point, it feels great, and then you stagnate. And then you might grow a little more, and then you stagnate more. If you're in one of those stagnation periods, this sounds like the right book to pick up.
Yeah.
And will people be able to read the introduction as like the free sample on Kindle?
Yes, they will, Liam. Yeah, on Kindle and the actual paperback print chapter, which it was funny. I was actually talking about this yesterday with my book coach about how to do it, how to make both the introduction available in paperback form and ebook form. I think with Amazon on Kindle with the ebook, they make some of the book, like they preview some of it. And obviously with Audible, there's a sample that you can listen to. It's usually 2 or 3 minutes. So and I already actually have chosen the sample because that was part of working with the audiobook producer, the onboarding process. I had to identify what I wanted to be the sample for Audible.
Okay. And so is there anywhere else that you're talking about this process of self-publishing if people want to hear more about your techniques or see more of the behind the scenes? Is that something you're talking about on Substack or anywhere else?
Definitely. So I have several Substack posts about this, like 3 reasons why I decided to self-publish. I'm actually going to be writing about this whole idea of a solo publishing house within the next week. But if anyone has questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer them, or in FLX. I'm a member of Liam and Julie Sturgeon's community, a proud longtime member. So if anyone that is in the community wants to ask questions about this, I'm happy to answer, or even to do another live Q&A session within the community, or even here again if people have questions. Yeah.
I was just thinking we should probably do an FLX book club.
Yes, definitely.
It would be really fun to get a group of us. And this is, again, my pitch. If you're not a member of the community, you could definitely join our community for free for a month. And then after that, you can decide if it's worth sticking around. But there's tons of stuff in there that you can grab with that free month if you go to joinfreelancesuccess.com. We have another question here from Michael, which is, did you make the decision to go exclusive with Amazon, or are you distributing elsewhere as well?
I am also going to distribute through Ingram Spark so that the book can be available in bookstores if they want it, and in libraries. I actually had one of my newsletter subscribers email me and ask me, "Oh, how can I get this book in my library? Can I have the ISBN number," which is the number that's on the back of the book, so that I can request it at my local library. So there will be that option. We're going through the distribution process now. That's certain things you learn when you're self-publishing, like to get it into libraries and bookstores, they want the final PDF. You can't, with Amazon, they allow you to put a placeholder until a week before. But with Ingram Spark, you need the final PDF. So we're going through that process now.
And are you going to approach bookstores to get it in there as well? Or is it mostly just the paperback on demand and Amazon?
The paperback on demand and Ingram Spark, they do the bookstore distribution. So bookstores want it, they would request it. My understanding is through Ingram Spark.
Cool. Okay.
Or local libraries too can request through that channel.
Okay. We'll definitely turn this conversation into a blog with clips and everything so that people can grab all of these resources that Satta is sharing with us. But sounds like it's definitely worthwhile following you on Substack and LinkedIn and all the other places. I'm also going to pull this back up in case people have not had the chance yet to scan the QR code here for this book. Now is your chance. Definitely grab a pre-order if you can. Anything else you want to say about this QR code or anything like that, Satta?
Yeah, so there are some pre-order bonuses. I don't know if we have that slide, but if you go to my website, sattasarmah.com/book, there are some bonuses. So there's a 29-page workbook I created for advanced freelancers that help them with a strategic reset and plan out a growth plan for their business. And there's another workbook for early stage freelancers. That's the Freelance Business Building Workbook. So it covers a lot of the themes that are in the book about how to choose your business structure, how to market, how to find your first client. So that workbook will be better for early stage freelancers. And I'm also doing an internal hourly rate calculator app. And then there's another bonus as well. I'm going to do some Loom videos, some Loom tutorials. So if you pre-order the book, you'll get those. One is Always Be Marketing. I talk about 3 LOIs that landed me over $100,000 in work. And then one is Always Be Marketing with AI. So I go through a process of how I use AI to help me find prospects and market to them for my freelance business to find clients.
Awesome. Okay. So go ahead and scan that code, and I will also one more time give you the chance to scan this here, though probably if you scan the other one, you'll get the same, you'll get those pre-order bonuses. And then, of course, if you do want to join Invisible Ink Editing and get some advice for us, come join our newsletter. Even if you are just in the idea phase of writing a book, we have content and advice for you. If you are somebody who's got a manuscript, you should submit it to us for a free sample edit. We'd love to take a look. And of course, if you are a freelancer, which hopefully lots of you are, since this is what we're talking about today, do come join Freelance Success. It's a community that has been around really long time, way longer than I've been a member there. And it's one of the most established communities for freelancers on the internet. And every single week we have something new and new advice coming out, plus a library of content of stuff that I mostly created because I needed it to run my own freelance business. Satta, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there any last thing that you want to say before we wrap up?
No, thanks everyone for joining, and go buy my book.
Yes, go buy the book. All right. We will have more clips of this if you didn't get to watch the whole thing. coming up on probably next week on LinkedIn. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you, Satta, again.
Thanks. Thank you, Liam, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Have a great one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.